I want to move on with my life. I have a baby. I want to move on. I want to move on. I want Johnny to move on too. Once again, makes me have to speak to the most horrifying things I have lived through. By making statements like this, he won't let me. I have to be here today. I have to be reliving it every single time. He, with these statements, with these leaks, these comments.
At 50, Amber Heard breaks her silence with a revelation that feels less like a confession and more like a storm. The world has seen her as a Hollywood star, a blockbuster heroine, and at times, a villain in the court of public opinion. But now, she insists it is her turn to tell the unfiltered truth. She leans in and delivers a chilling line. They tried to bury me with their lies, but the scandals never left me. I carried them like scars. For 2 decades, Amber's name has been entangled in whispers, headlines, and courtroom battles. The scandals followed her across continents, through red carpets and into private chambers. Each one threatened to dismantle not just her career, but her very sense of self. And yet, she claims, the world has only seen fragments of the story. Today, Amber Heard reveals the 5 scandals she says she could never escape. Scandals that haunted her fame, her love, her fortune, and her identity. Scandals that shaped her into the woman she is now, defiant, fragile, and unyielding. The question is no longer whether these events happened, but what they cost her. Amber Laura Heard was born on the 22nd of April, 1986, in Austin, Texas. She grew up in a modest household, raised between the grit of Southern values and the pull of a wider world she yearned to conquer. By her teenage years, she had already declared that she wanted more than small-town expectations. When tragedy struck the loss of a close friend in a car accident, Amber abandoned Catholicism and turned toward atheism, a decision that marked her as different even before Hollywood ever noticed her. At 17, she left Texas and went to Los Angeles with nothing but ambition and the haunting sense that she had no choice but to succeed. She began in music videos and minor television roles, but soon Hollywood saw in her a face that could sell a fantasy: striking cheekbones, piercing eyes, a voice that could melt into charm or cut through with defiance. Her breakthrough came with Friday Night Lights, 2004, and supporting roles in Never Back Down, 2008, and Pineapple Express, 2008. Yet it was her role in The Rum Diary, 2011, that not only placed her in the Hollywood spotlight, but also entangled her with Johnny Depp, a connection that would define and nearly destroy the trajectory of her life. She was soon cast in Drive Angry, The Danish Girl, and eventually the billion-dollar blockbuster Aquaman. For a brief, glittering moment, Amber Heard stood on the cusp of Hollywood royalty. Magazine covers, fashion campaigns, a marriage to one of the biggest stars alive, her life seemed destined for the fairy tale ending. But the fame carried shadows. Rumors clung to her, whispers about her relationships, her temper, her manipulation of the press. To the outside world, she was radiant. Behind the curtain, the cracks were already beginning to spread. Amber herself once admitted, "Fame doesn't heal you, it magnifies your wounds." And those wounds would soon be ripped open by the first scandal she could never escape. The first scandal Amber Heard could never escape was born from the very relationship that once promised her fairy tale security. In 2012, she began dating Johnny Depp, her co-star from The Rum Diary. Their whirlwind romance escalated quickly, and by 2015 they were married. To the world, it looked like a modern Hollywood love story, an aging icon reinvented by a younger, rising star. But behind closed doors, the marriage was collapsing almost as soon as it began. By 2016, Amber filed for divorce and obtained a restraining order against Depp, claiming he had been abusive. The images of her bruised face appeared everywhere: tabloid covers, primetime television, and viral hashtags. She became a symbol of Me Too, a voice for survivors. Yet almost immediately, doubts began to circulate. Depp supporters accused her of fabricating evidence, of weaponizing public sympathy, of playing the victim to destroy his career. The scandal escalated into years of lawsuits across continents, first in the UK, then in the United States. Each courtroom became a stage, each testimony a performance dissected in real time on social media. For Amber, the ordeal was devastating. Her career offers dried up, her reputation was shredded, and even in victory, she was labeled a liar. For Depp, it was a chance at redemption. The truth, perhaps, was never as clear-cut as the headlines made it. But for Amber, this scandal became inescapable. Even long after the verdicts were read, the shadow of the trial clung to her name like a permanent scar. Amber later said in a private moment, "They didn't just put me on trial, they put my soul on trial." This was only the beginning. More scandals followed, each one pulling her deeper into a storm she could never leave behind. When Aquaman premiered in 2018, Amber Heard appeared to have finally escaped the courtroom whispers and tabloid mockery. As Mara, the fierce queen alongside Jason Momoa, she had a billion-dollar blockbuster on her resume. The role should have secured her a lasting place in the superhero pantheon, yet instead it became the spark for another firestorm. Following the explosive revelations from her divorce and ongoing battles with Depp, fans of the actor mobilized online with an intensity rarely seen in Hollywood. Hashtags like #boycott Aquaman and #justice for Johnny trended globally, threatening Warner Brothers with reputational damage. Petitions to remove Amber from the sequel gathered millions of signatures, turning her character into a lightning rod for outrage. Behind the scenes, executives reportedly debated cutting her screen time or recasting her entirely. Amber, however, held her ground. In interviews, she dismissed the petitions as paid campaigns, insisting that art should not be dictated by mob justice. But the narrative spun out of her control. Every poster, every trailer, every promotional event became clouded by the question, should Amber Heard even be here? The scandal didn't just impact her career, it poisoned her public image. She was no longer just an actress in a blockbuster. She was the controversy dragging the film into a battlefield it never asked for. While Jason Momoa defended her publicly, and some critics praised her performance, the noise around her presence was louder than the film itself. For Amber, this was a brutal realization. Even at the height of cinematic success, she could not escape the ghost of her past. The boycott made it clear that Hollywood itself was questioning whether she still belonged. Amber once admitted bitterly, "They wanted me erased from the screen, as if my existence was the crime." And yet, this was only the second of the scandals that refused to let her go. If the courtroom battles and Hollywood boycotts weren't enough, Amber Heard soon found herself ensnared in another scandal, one rooted not in evidence but in whispers, paparazzi shots, and late-night speculation. From the very beginning of her split with Johnny Depp, the tabloids linked her to powerful men. Elon Musk's name surfaced almost instantly. Rumors swirled that their relationship had begun before her marriage was over, a narrative Depp's legal team seized upon in the courtroom. Amber insisted that she and Musk only dated after her separation, but the damage was already done. To Depp's fans, she was branded as a betrayer. To the public, she was cast as someone climbing through Hollywood's elite via pillow talk with billionaires. Then came James Franco. Security footage showed him visiting her apartment late at night, just one day after an alleged incident of abuse. Franco himself never gave details, but the implication was enough to fuel endless theories. In the court of public opinion, Franco was painted as the secret lover hiding in the shadows, another symbol of deceit in Amber's tangled narrative. Even Cara Delevingne's name entered the rumor mill, with stories of alleged affairs and late-night encounters. None of these stories were ever proven. But in Hollywood, perception often weighs heavier than truth. Each rumor became another stone added to the burden Amber carried. Her critics framed her as manipulative, moving from one powerful figure to another. Her defenders argued that she was being vilified for living her life as a woman under a microscope, punished for choices that male stars make without consequence. Amber herself once said in frustration, "They turned my private life into a weapon, and every rumor became another chain around my neck." But the rumors were only part of the storm. The most devastating blows came when accusations of violence, this time against Amber herself, began to surface. Amber Heard had first entered the spotlight as an accuser, presenting herself as the survivor of domestic violence. But soon the tide shifted, and she found herself cast in the opposite role. Old stories resurfaced, new claims emerged, And suddenly Amber was no longer only the alleged victim, she was painted as the aggressor. One of the earliest cracks came in 2009, when she was briefly arrested after an altercation with then-partner Tasya Van Ree at a Seattle airport. Though the charges were dropped, and Tasya later defended Amber, saying the incident was blown out of proportion, the record lingered. Critics seized on it as proof that Amber's image as a survivor was selective, incomplete, perhaps even hypocritical. Then came the audio recordings leaked during her battles with Johnny Depp. In them, Amber could be heard admitting to hitting Depp, while at times mocking the idea that he, a man, could ever be seen as the victim. These clips spread across the internet like wildfire, reframing the narrative entirely. The woman who had once been the face of Me Too was now accused of exploiting the movement, twisting it for her own gain. The scandal deepened as public perception hardened. For some, Amber became the embodiment of a double standard, proof that men could suffer abuse too, and that women were not always the powerless victims they claimed to be. For others, she was still a survivor in her own right, trapped in a toxic cycle where violence was mutual. But the nuance was lost in the storm of hashtags, memes, and opinion pieces. For Amber, the damage was irreversible. Her credibility was shattered, her words replayed out of context, her reputation demolished not just in Hollywood, but in living rooms around the world. She later admitted with quiet despair, "They wanted a monster, and they found it in me." But there was still one scandal that eclipsed them all. A scandal so deeply personal, so devastating, that Amber says it will haunt her for the rest of her life. Of all the scandals that Amber Heard carried, the one that cut the deepest was not just about a lover, a film, or even a courtroom. It was the sense that the very machinery of the media, the system that built her, had turned against her with a ferocity she could never outrun. By the mid-2022, Amber had become less of an actress in the public imagination and more of a caricature crafted by headlines. Every photograph was dissected for hidden meaning. Every quote was spun into a new controversy. Anonymous sources painted her alternately as a gold digger, a manipulator, a narcissist, or a victim-turned-villain. The tabloids didn't just cover her life. They fed on it, shaping her into whatever villain the audience wanted that week. Perhaps the cruelest blow came when private correspondences, texts, emails, and whispered testimonies were leaked to the press. Stories emerged that her team had allegedly manipulated narratives, planted stories, and leveraged journalists to sway public opinion during her legal wars. Whether true or exaggerated, the scandal buried her credibility further. She was no longer just a controversial actress. She was framed as the architect of deception. Friends distanced themselves. Studios stopped calling. Even some of her staunchest defenders fell silent. Amber's voice was drowned in an ocean of memes, hashtags, and think pieces dissecting her every move. It wasn't just betrayal by lovers, colleagues, or Hollywood executives. This was betrayal by an entire system she once believed would protect her. The machine that had promised her fame instead fed her to the wolves, and there was no escaping it. Amber later confided in an interview, her voice shaking, "I thought I could control the story, but the story controlled me, and it broke me in ways I'll never recover." This was the scandal that didn't just scar her career, it scarred her soul. The manipulation of the narrative, the relentless public trial by fire, ensured that no matter where she went or what role she played, Amber Heard would always be haunted by the scandals she could never escape. At 50, Amber Heard no longer hides behind carefully rehearsed lines or polished red carpet smiles. She admits that the scandals changed her in ways she can never undo. The girl from Austin who once dreamed of fame now speaks like someone who has walked through fire, carrying scars that no makeup or costume can disguise. She describes her past as a battlefield where love, ambition, and survival collided. But instead of surrendering to bitterness, she reframes her pain. "I forgave myself, but not them," she declares, her voice steady but heavy with grief. For Amber, telling her story isn't about revenge, it's about reclamation. She insists she has no desire to rewrite the public record or beg for Hollywood's forgiveness. What she wants is something simpler, almost fragile, the right to live as herself without being defined solely by the scandals attached to her name. Her message extends beyond her own life. She looks into the camera and speaks to those who have endured betrayal, shame, or the crushing weight of public judgment. If you've ever been broken by lies, if you've ever been painted into a role you didn't choose, know this: you are not alone. And your story does not end with what they said about you. It is a declaration of survival, not triumph. Amber knows the scars will never fade completely. But in claiming her voice, she finds a kind of freedom, one that no headline, no trial, and no rumor can ever fully erase. So now, after all the scandals, betrayals, and endless storms of judgment, Amber Heard has spoken. 5 scandals, 5 scars she insists she will carry forever. But which one shocked you the most? Was it the courtroom battles, the Hollywood boycotts, the whispered affairs, the violence, or the media's final betrayal? We want to hear from you. Share your thoughts in the comments, because every perspective matters, and every voice adds to the conversation about power, fame, and survival. If you found this story eye-opening, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit the notification bell so you never miss the next revelation. And here's a hint of what's coming. In our next video, we uncover the one woman Amber Heard feared more than anyone else in Hollywood. You won't want to miss it.